Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Commander's Core Studio. Welcome to the show. So on today's episode, I've got a discussion for you. Let's talk about this, and I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. The direction that Magic is going right now, and whether or not Wizards will, I'm not going to say keep their word, because it's not like an ironclad, like, hey, like, we definitely agreed to do this, but it's more so like a, yeah, we'd say we'd be doing this, and are they actually going to be doing it, and if it's good for Magic or not? Now, before I keep talking and beating around the bush, essentially, on what I'm talking about, let's jump into it. So on Blogatog, the blog of Mark Rosewater, the head designer at Wizards, also known as Morrow, Mark tends to respond to certain questions, and it's nice to see what Mark says, essentially. So let's talk about this one. And actually, because it's kind of confusing on Blogatog, like what the response is and what like the ask is, I highlighted in blue Mark's response, if I did it correctly. Mark, now that we're on near the end of spoiler season for Outlaws of Thunder Junction, I have a concern. Of the 250-ish cards revealed so far out of the 276, we have 51 legends. Yes, 2 of them are planeswalkers, 4 are enchantments, and 1 is an artifact, but still that's 44 legendary creatures in the set, the highest ever that I can find. Is this the new paradigm for sets to come, or just an aberration due to the nature of the set? Mark responds, it's part of the villain showcase theme of the set. It's not a new norm. Actually, the average legendary creature count in Premier sets is going down. And I believe that's all Mark said. Let me double check really quick. Yes, there you go. So basically, the concern is, and this is a concern both for, I mean, I think initially it probably wasn't a concern for Commander players that, you know, you were getting like more and more Commanders, more and more options, but eventually it becomes that, at least to players like me. But also players who play other formats, especially ones who play like Standard or Limited, having just a giant pool of legendaries, especially legendary creatures, really can impact those formats quite largely. And when it comes to, again, the impact on Commander, players like me who are like, yeah, I'd rather just not like a shotgun spray of Commanders out there every single year, including some that are kind of redundant or purposeless, essentially, let's say, like a worse version of this other Commander. Okay, well, why'd you make a worse version of this Commander? Or like an absurdly more powerful version of this same Commander, so that players then like deconstruct their deck and build a new deck around that new one. There are some problematic things where when you just say, oh yeah, let's make 400 Commanders a year or even more, you're going to run into some issues in, again, not just Commander, but in other formats as well. So, where this kind of comes from, let's look at another post from Mark Rosewater back in, let's see, July of last year. Asked, and again, same format where I highlighted Mark's response, how likely or even possible is a set with fewer than 10 legendary creatures? I love Commander and learning the lore of Magic characters, especially when they get multiple printings and we can see their characterization evolve through mechanics, but I feel like older Magic had more of a giant armies of monsters clashing flavor than it does have now. That it doesn't quite have now. Mark's response, we've been talking about lowering the average of legendary creatures in Magic IP sets. Universe Beyond, due to its nature, will still want a lot of legendary creatures, as the name characters of an IP are a big draw. Okay, so kind of digging into that, where Mark is saying that, hey, we hear what people are saying, or we see kind of the direction things are going, and we're going to be lowering the average number of legendary creatures in Magic IP sets. Now, how much lower is that going to be? And again, clearly there are exceptions to that, because Outlaws at Thunder Junction, again, has, what did Mark say, a villain showcase theme. So, I mean, I guess, again, when you have, like, these big, like, War of the Spark type things, or, again, like, apparently Outlaws at Thunder Junction, when you're like, hey, like, we're just bringing together a bunch of different characters, they're still going to be doing a lot of legendary creatures. So, when it comes to, I guess, looking at future sets that we're getting this year, like Duskmourn and Bloomburrow, like, I wouldn't think that's going to be the same case, because, you know, I don't think that that's, like, a giant, like, hey, all these characters that you know are going to be here. Those are supposed to be, like, kind of, like, new areas, from what I'm understanding. So, yeah, we shall see with that, but again, kind of Mark having said last year, and I know they plan these things out in advance, and like they had said, like, okay, when do they actually like start like finalizing, like, this is when we're going to be lowering the average number of legendary creatures? When do they actually kind of decide that? And then how does that impact sets moving forward? Because they already have things planned to a certain extent. That being said, again, when Mark's saying like, hey, like, this set was different. It's like a blip on the radar, like different, essentially outside the norm now because, yeah, it's got the villain showcase or whatever it's called. So let's look at this chart that was put together online, which is absolutely lovely, on Reddit. Legendary cards per set. And this goes all the way back to, looks like Zendikar, so quite a few years ago, back before I started getting back into Magic, which was actually Gatecrash, interestingly enough. Yeah, looking at this, we've got clearly what used to be like, 10 or less in sets with a spike at OG Theros, apparently, because, like the gods, which, yeah, there you go. And that was kind of like the aberration on it, right? Like there was like 22 or 23, it looks like. That was the weird like outlier essentially. And then kind of moving forward, all of a sudden, yeah, we get to Dominaria, which was, yeah, like all legends. So that was like the first one of its kind where it's like, yeah, here we go. All these legendary creatures. And then it goes back down, but then it goes right back up with War of the Spark. So again, this kind of like, I guess, villain showcase, like giant battle kind of themes essentially. Ones, show off that. But then since War of the Spark, like, it's been pretty consistently, like, much higher than it used to be, right? Like, much higher. Again, we had, like, 10, 20 at the very most, like, around, again, OG Theros, Hour Devastation, essentially. But then since then, it's like, oh, yeah, we're getting, like, 40 or 50%, essentially. With Outlaws of Thunder Junction being very, very, very high. Now, again, I do kind of like, I am kind of going back and forth and saying like legendaries and also commanders. And yes, I realize that some of the legendaries are not commanders. Like, the planeswalkers that don't say like, can be your commander. Or again, talking about enchantments in the set, there's a couple of those or an artifact here and there. But for the vast majority of these things, yeah, they are legendary creatures, which are commanders. And yeah, just kind of how, even if they're not just creatures, but the other kinds as well, how does that impact other formats? But yeah, especially when it comes to commanders, legendary creatures, how does that impact commander when you are, again, just flooding the entire commander, play base, essentially, with, hey, here's 40 new commanders, or not 40, 400 new commanders or whatnot, essentially, every single year. I think last year we had like 398. I think that was including like backgrounds or whatnot, but like even then, if you want to count like all those different variations, that's an absurd number, but still. At least 300 plus every single year, it seems like. And yeah, so what does it look like going forward? Again, Mark does say like we're going to be lowering the number. Are you lowering it back to where we're at in Zendikar? Or are you lowering it back to where we're at in Zendikar Rising? Because those are two very different areas. Again, like 25 for Zendikar Rising looks like around there compared to Zendikar, which was under 10. I highly doubt they're going under 10. It doesn't seem like they would go back to that because, again, Commander is a big pull, and they might think that's an overcorrection then at that point. We're like, okay, we're not giving enough Commander players, new commanders to build new decks around, which they want you to build new decks. Not that building new decks is a bad thing, but, more new commanders come out, again, especially exciting ones that do different things, or ones that are just better versions of other ones. Players are more likely to, deconstruct a deck, build a new deck, that kind of thing, too. So there's a lot of different factors to this, and again, trying to figure out exactly, the right balance of it, yes, is difficult, but, I don't think the current solution's where we should be. With, again, what was just said, 51 legendaries from Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Was that really necessary? Yeah, we'll see. But, yeah, taking a look at, again, percentages, we look at, again, the number of cards that are not a reprint. Again, I'm going with not a reprint just to kind of see, I don't want to see, old commanders or whatnot, old cards, essentially, but I guess it does have a factor on it. But that's just the way I went about it, okay? So, Outlaws of Thunder Junction, not a reprint cards from this year, which are obviously from what this set is. So, essentially, we have, again, 223 cards. Let's see what kind of percentage that is when it comes to the number of legendaries. We have 51. Again, 51 new legendary cards, and 51 out of 223 is what? Almost a fourth, over a fifth, almost a fourth of the cards in this set are legendary, which is an absurd amount. Just again, is a really an absurd number. Again, if you said years and years and years ago this was anywhere near this, people are like, what? A fourth of the cards are legendary? Just okay. I mean, that's obviously having an impact on limited, standard, other formats as well. But yeah, Commander again, oh yeah, here's all these new exciting ones. Yeah, build decks around them essentially. So let's just take a look again with what Mark said, because Mark said for non-Universes Beyond sets, and that's an entirely different argument, again, essentially, because we're going to be doing next year, and I already covered this on another episode, apparently 2 Universes Beyond main sets every year going forward, which I find to be absolutely ridiculous. And I think, actually, did Mark say something about Premier sets? Here you go. The average legendary creature count in Premier sets is going down. So I'm assuming what Mark means by Premier is non-Universes Beyond Premier set. That also is not a villain showcase, apparently. So that's when they're going to be going down. So we also have, let's see what Lord of the Rings had last year, because that was our first, I guess technically only full set, right, that has been Universes Beyond outside of Magic's IP. 281 cards that were not reprints from that set. And let's just see where we got the legendary number. 109. 109. So what is it again? 281. 109 legendary cards that were not reprints. Yeah, that's a lot. So that is an absurd number. Again, that is, I mean, over a third, nearly, and not nearly a half, but like over a third of the cards are legendary. So you kind of see like the extent of where they're willing to go when it comes to non-Magic IPs and how heavily invested they are in appealing to, in my opinion, appealing to Commander players, right? Giving legendaries, again, giving a ton of new legendary commanders, being like, oh, okay, here's all these. Other legendary things too, yes, but I mean, like 5 different versions of, I mean, I guess it was 6 versions, right, in total of Gandalf. And this actually only including like the base set. I think there was also like those extended cards or whatever too, and also the Commander precons with it as well. So obviously all of that has a factor in it as well, but like, again, when it comes to Universes Beyond sets, they're willing to go up to an absurd number of legendaries. So adjusting this balance again to like, we're going to have this many cards from new sets be legendaries. We're going to have this many cards from Universes Beyond set be legendaries. And that's going to be even more. So like, you could hypothetically think that like at the end of the year, and it'll be interesting to see kind of when next year happens, right? Because at the end of next year, we'll have had 2 more Universes Beyond full sets under our belt to see kind of like what they did with those and how many legendaries we got in those. And then also in the new sets with this kind of adjustment, you'd assume they've gotten to like their adjustment period at that point. In non-villain showcase sets that are not Universes Beyond, what is our number of average legendary, permanents, legendary creatures essentially as well. So at the end of the year, we could very well see like, we could have more commanders out of Universes Beyond than we are actually getting in actual Magic IPs. If that adjustment, changes in the way that it might based off of these, statements. Which I kind of find to be ridiculous if that's the case. And we'll cross the bridge when we get to it. But like, again, if you're saying both of these things are true, again, we're going to have less commanders, which I want less commanders. Overall, I want less commanders printed. I want less commanders printed each year because again, the focus kind of seems to be off on some of them, or it's just like a redundant one, or one that doesn't matter, or one that's absurdly powerful and pushed just because they want to sell things, and it just kind of makes another commander that you already had a deck built around just completely irrelevant now at that point. Not irrelevant. I mean, commanders are never irrelevant, but like, it's going to encourage some players to get rid of a deck to then replace with another deck. The just absurdity of, again, at the end of that year, you could have more Universes Beyond commanders than actual commanders. I think the numbers for both should be going down. I don't think we should be pushing, Universes Beyond to the point where, again, it's a different discussion for a different day. I already had that discussion, really, about whether Universes Beyond is a good or bad thing for Magic. But having, again, 5 different versions of Gandalf, do we really need that? Couldn't that cut down on the number of legendaries? Couldn't that cut down on all that? Couldn't you just do one flip card of Gandalf and be like, hey, on the front it's got this, back it's got this? Yeah. Wouldn't that solve the issue? Probably. No? Or I guess when we go into Marvel, cool, let's have 5 different Iron Mans and 6 Captain Americas and all these other things. Great. Moving on, though, just kind of looking at like what our average might be. We did have, another set come out this year so far, Murders of Karlov Manor. Let's talk about the cards that are not reprints in that one. We had 269 cards in that set that were not reprints. And potentially to try to see kind of what the base level of average commanders might be, or legendaries might be. In that set, we had 27 cards out of that 260 or so. What is it, 269? 27 cards, so nearly exactly 10%, basically. I mean, one card off, but basically 10% of the cards are legendary. So is that the amount that we're going to be getting from now on, essentially? Is that like the new baseline? I mean, we didn't ask that question directly to Mark, right? Essentially, I haven't seen that question asked to Mark. Like, is that like the average that we should be expecting? If it is that average that we're expecting, like, it's a little bit high for my liking. Essentially, again, I'd prefer, again, more concentrated, less commanders, not just like a shotgun spray of commanders in each set. It's still better than getting 40 or 50 every single set, where at the end of the year you had 300 or 400 new commanders every single year, which I find to be obnoxious and ridiculous compared to the explosion. I mean, like, literally from, like, whatever, 5-6 years ago, we had less commanders than we've had printed in the last 5 or 6 years, which is just kind of crazy. Again, Magic's been around for 30-plus years. So, the focus on commanders has gotten a bit ridiculous, and again, some might see that as a good thing. I see it as positives with many negatives. Again, when your format is being hyper concentrated and every single product has to apply to Commander essentially. And if Wizards says that they don't, they're pretty much not. I'm not gonna say they're lying in my opinion, but they're speaking out of both sides of their mouth when they're saying like, no, this product is for Modern. You know, we have Modern Horizons 3 coming out. It's for Modern players. Then what's that product that's attached to it that's called Modern Horizons Commander? Oh, no, it's also, no, it's not for, okay, it's for Commander players, though. It's called Modern Horizons 3. It's for Commander players. Oh, so those cards are legal in Modern? No. Even though the name is Modern Horizons Commander. Not for Modern players, not legal in Modern. Okay. Again, when you start to hyper-focus on a format, bad things happen, too. So, yeah, when we're talking about, again, 10%, that's probably what I would say. If I had to guess, 10% is probably what we're going to be looking for when it comes to the number of legendaries in sets moving forward that are, again, the premier sets that are also not villain showcase / giant battle between goodies and baddies like War of the Spark style sets. And then also your Universes Beyond, apparently, which is just going to be an absurd number of legendaries. Looking at other ones, just kind of see how we were at, in previous years, like going back 2019. So before the year of Commander started, which was 2020, right? The year of Commander, what Wizards called it, essentially, right? 2020, was, I believe that was. Eldraine. First Eldraine. We had 269 cards that were not reprints in that main set. 29 cards were legendary. So there you go. So again, like around that 10%-ish, essentially, is probably what we should be expecting. You go a little bit further back to Rivals of Ixalan, 178 cards in that set that were not reprints. And we've got, 20? So a little more than that 10% as well. So, like, hovering right around that amount, I think, is probably what we're going to see. Like, typically in sets, probably about, because sets are, like, pretty big these days. Like, 25 cards, I would say, that are probably legendary. We shall see. Going back 2017, this is kind of where things were a little bit lower, even. Back when I first started getting back, or actually into Commander itself, 187 cards in, was that 8th Revolt? And we've got, 15? Only 15 legendaries in that set. So, yeah, and not all of them, again, Commanders. Again, you see, like, Planar Bridges on here. So is Johnny Unyielding. Like, you see that, obviously, the explosion of Commander has made it even just a hyper-focus, again, on the number of creatures that are legendary in each set going forward. Again, Outlaws being at, again, 51 legendaries, not all creatures. Let's see what that final number is, actually, on Outlaws really quick. T-Creature. Let's just do that real quick. T-Creature. 43. So, yeah, again, everything but 8. A lot of things that are legendary creatures that can be your commander. And again, saying that this is aberration, we've seen that this is, I don't know if Wizards said that it's a problem, really. They just kind of said that, like, we've been talking about lowering it. So, if they're making a change, it's for a reason. The reason is probably, again, because it's just becoming oversaturated, the number of commanders, essentially. And again, you can only have so many good ideas for a commander in a year. And also, you are, again, they're just making, like, worse versions of ones, better versions of other ones, redundant ones, and also affecting other formats, too, like Modern, Standard, I guess more so Standard, more so Limited when it comes to your options for cards. When you have legendaries, the legend rule really applies a lot more in, non-singleton formats. I mean, it still applies in Commander, like, there are limitations that, like, cloning something, unless you have, like, a Spark Double, but it's more so for other formats when it comes to that. But also limiting it for Commander is a good thing, in my opinion, because, again, you don't just get a diluted version of the product. So, we shall see how things going forward are going to be, because, again, apparently, we're going to be lowering the number of legendary creatures in Magic IP sets. Universes Beyond is different, of course, because we need 5, 6, 7 Gandalfs, because Wizards wants to sell things. And then also, yeah, we'll see if, the number of sets that are premier sets, because I think, and correct me the constable if I'm wrong on this, but, like, we have, 7 premier sets each year? Is that, I believe, what the number is? Essentially, like, 7 actual big sets. And then moving forward next year, we're getting 2 Universes Beyond sets, essentially, within that 7. I think that was announced. Like, moving forward, each year we're going to be getting 2, which I absolutely dislike very much. I think I did an entire episode on that, so make sure to check that out. But we're getting 2 Universes Beyond sets out of 7. So those are going to have an absurd amount of legendary creatures. Then we're getting 5 regular sets. And let's say, again, I'm just guesstimating again, like, let's say maybe every other year we get, like, a villain showcase. Maybe, let's just say every year we get a villain showcase kind of set, or, like, a hero showcase set, or, like, a battle set like War of the Spark style, or, like, a Dominaria type set where it's, like, legendaries everywhere. So let's say one of those, again, is a high commander set. So maybe 4 of the sets each year out of the 7 are going to be like these lower number, like 10% legendary set. We shall see. So yeah, it's interesting to think through all these things and to say, like, where are we at right now? Like, where did we used to be again? Where did we used to be? Just looking back and being like, there's no way we had less than 10 commanders in a set, or less than 10 legendaries in a set. And like, oh yeah, back in like Zendikar, New Phyrexia, Gatecrash, like back then, not many at all. Like, that's just what it was. Now, is that the right number of legendaries for where we're at now and Commander being as popular it is? Probably not. But like, is 51? No, also not. So yeah, somewhere in between, probably. Again, like that 10% seems like a better amount, I guess. Again, maybe limiting it to, in my opinion, like 170, 180, maybe 200 at the most commanders each year, I think would be much more reasonable than where we've been. I think that's still pretty high. If we could limit to like 150, I'd probably be a little happier with that, but I don't think that's happening. Again, especially with like the IP sets, the Universes Beyond sets, the ones outside of the IP being like, we need 18 versions of Thanos. Because, yeah, people are going to buy that. So, we shall see. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on all this. I think it's a pretty interesting discussion. Again, just like where we've been, where we're at, what they're saying, what Morrow is saying. Again, I guess Morrow technically doesn't really speak like officially for Wizards on some of these, but like kind of-ish? I don't know. Yeah, where we're supposed to be going, but like where we're at. And again, like, oh, but wait, that doesn't count because that's a villain showcase. So we shall see. It's interesting. So, yeah, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. What is your perfect number of legendary cards per set? Like, what percentage, I guess, or like what number is your perfect amount of legendaries per set? And yeah, let me know in the comments below. Of course, as always, thanks again, and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.